Get started?
Definitely.
Level? Yeah.
Okay. It's probably, my voice is probably not so good, but at this end, I don't know how clear it is. But thanks everybody for joining us to the next BIM User Exchange Group Singapore. Obviously today we have two very exciting presentations, and I think that also brought the attendance up from the last meeting, which was also already good. At this meeting, I think we'll get a lot out of both topics. There's a couple of things we also want to get out of today's meeting. Firstly, we really want to understand what the topics are for the next meetings and what you would like to get interested in. Now, obviously, there was a lot of feedback on at the last meeting about, you know, from where does BIM go? How do we get to BIM excellence? And we're lucky enough to get Bilal as the first presenter to really show us a roadmap towards that. But, you know, obviously what we're looking for, this being a user exchange group, we're looking for, okay, let's find the topics that people want to talk about and want to know more about, and then let's find the right speakers wherever they are around the world or within Singapore to really address those topics. And so I really thank the two speakers for the time they have tonight to join us. Look, I'm looking forward to some really interesting discussion on these on the both interesting topics. So I'll hand over to you, Bilal.
Thank you, Neville. Just a sound check. All good? Can you hear me properly? Okay, can you hear me? Just a second. Sorry,
I can hear you perfectly, Bilal. So,
okay, beautiful. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to go ahead.
Can you guys hear? Rexter? Darren?
Yeah.
You can hear. Oh, good.
Okay, I'm going to mute everything except you, Neville, all right? Okay. Thank you all for attending this session, and thank you to Rexter and Neville and others for inviting me to present at the User Exchange Group in Singapore. I've been to Singapore before and met lots of people in the BIM space, and it's quite an active space, and I'm really happy to have been invited to present to you and to all the others coming from all over the world. We have people attending from, as I can tell, from Germany, Canada, Spain, and a few other countries. Today's topic is about integrated performance assessment. From BIMwash to BIMexcellence, and I'm just going to jump into it. So about me, I'm just going to not waste much time. If you need to know a little bit more about me as a presenter, you can look at BIMframework.info. You can look at lots of research I do in this space. You can also look at BIMexcellence.com, where I work as an assessor. I'm the founder of BIMexcellence.com, and most of the concepts you're going to see today are based on BIMexcellence and the research, of course. And if you like a little bit more general information about BIM, I invite you to visit BIMthinkspace.com, which I'm really pleased now that we have some of the episodes translated into Spanish, and as of today we have the first episode in Italian as well. So I'm just going to directly go into what is BIM. Don't worry, I'm not just going to go into a spill again about what is BIM and what's not BIM, but this is just for us to really delimit, or understand when I say BIM that we all mean exactly the same thing. So I'm going to give you a couple of definitions. You can choose one of them. I'm going to use both. So the typical definition I use is that building information modeling is a set of technologies, processes, and policies. So it's not just a technology, it's not just a process, or not just a policy or a protocol. That's all together for all stakeholders to collaborate in the design, construction, operation of any kind of facility. So across the whole life cycle, it's for all types of users, it's for all technologies, processes, and policies. So it's quite a very wide definition of BIM. Another definition I'm going to give it, generate today, not generate today, but to discuss it with you today is that building information modeling is a current expression of construction industry innovation. It means that it is an innovation. It means the current expression of innovation. It means that in the future there will be other types of innovation that we have to adopt and improve our performance using these innovations. So keep that in mind. So when we're discussing BIM and BIM performance, we're not really discussing just BIM and just BIM performance. We're discussing all types of information systems that will encounter us in the future. So BIM for me in this definition is a language of many dialects. So BIM as a language in Australia and in Singapore and in the UK and every other country, it is a common language. It may be a different, there will be different dialects of it. Just want to check, Rex, are you okay? Do you need anything?
Yeah, it just been cut off. Okay. Can you rewind a bit, please?
Yeah,
it's okay.
Rewind up till which word?
Up to the definition of BIM. You're starting to define what is.
Yeah. Okay.
BIM.
I'm just quickly just giving two definitions that I'm just going to use a very wide definition of BIM for all technologies, all processes, and all policies across the whole life cycle. And I'm going to use another definition, which is very important for today's discussion, that BIM is a language of innovation. It's a current expression of innovation, so there will be other expressions in the future. So what is BIM performance using these definitions, and what is BIMwash? I'm just going to flip these, and I'm going to start with BIMwash and then go to BIM performance. So what is BIMwash? Understanding BIMwash and its levels. Just give me a second. I think I'm getting some feedback sounds here. So I'm just gonna unmute. Sorry, I just muted all participants. And Neville, if you need to tell me anything, just please unmute yourself. Thank you. Understanding BIMwash and its levels. So what is BIMwash? BIMwash is to claim something that either is not there, and you're claiming some kind of competency which is not there, or it is you are inflating your abilities. And when we're discussing BIMwash, we are discussing different levels of BIMwash. Not all BIMwash practices are the same. There's 5 levels. The first is there's no BIMwash. There's no claim of BIMwash. When you ask someone, do you do BIM? And say, no, we don't do BIM. This is, of course, no BIMwash. There's no claim of BIMwash. The first level of BIMwash is what we call confusion. And I'm going to explain this in a second. And second is inexperience. And the third is exaggeration, and then illusion. So if we look at the first level of BIMwash, is that when people and companies are confused, they mix between CAD and BIM. They don't understand the difference between BIM and Revit. They don't understand the difference between a file server and a model server. And they're just confused. And when you ask them or discuss things with them, or even you read their material, you can see that they're confused. There's no malicious intent. They just don't know the difference between BIM and not BIM. The second level of BIMwash is we call inexperience. So this is where the user, the person or the company or the project team, they focus on BIM only as a very limited set of deliverables. Like they consider BIM to be just 3D visualization, maybe some coordinated drawings, maybe if you were lucky clash detection, maybe they look only at software, hardware, and training, but they don't really, because of their inexperience, they don't really understand, and this is not really just not enough to describe what they're doing as BIM and the requirements as BIM. There's lots of things about BIM deliverables which just float under the surface, like many of these model uses or BIM uses, like prefabrication and construction sequencing. Also on the requirements side, they might buy the right software and the right hardware and maybe provide some basic training, but they don't have any idea because of their experience about the types of standards and guides and workflows that they need to develop or they need to abide by. This is considered to be level 2 BIMwash, and many companies really are BIM washing at that level, and this is just because of the lack of experience in BIM, and also we don't consider this as a necessity to be malicious, intentionally deceiving a client, etc. No, it's just because of their inexperience, and lots of companies can be categorized as BIM washing at that level. And now it becomes a little bit more sinister and malicious when we go to level 3, and we call it exaggeration. This is where the abilities of a company or abilities of an individual are so inflated. So we call it a Hollywood BIM. It's all these special effects. They probably do a couple of they have a couple of projects and they claim they've done all the projects in BIM. Or they say they do a bit of clash detection and they claim all types of model uses and thermal analysis and etc. It's mostly a theoretical approach to BIM. It's an inflated approach, and this is actually a malicious type of behavior which really skews the market. So and many owners or clients fall for what we call Hollywood BIM, perpetrated mostly by consultants and sometimes even by BIM consultants trying to sell their services. Now, the fourth level of BIMwash is what we consider to be an illusion. There is no BIM at all. It's just people are claiming they are BIM because they intend to implement BIM in the future, or maybe they just bought a software of license, Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever, and they haven't really implemented it. So an illusion is definitely a malicious way of selling services, and it is really based on misrepresentation and deception. And sadly, there are lots of large companies actually and small companies that are involved in what we call BIMwash level 4 illusion, and these are easy to discover. Actually, the more people BIMwash, the higher the level, the easier you can discover the lack of ability. It only takes a couple of questions in any meeting to ask a consultant about how they are using the Revit and whether they use Revit. You can ask them a tricky question, whatever, about IFC or something like that, and you can automatically tell whether these people are BIM washing or not. So really, we have all these levels of BIM wash, and this is prevalent. And depending on the country, depending on the situation, you will find that most people do commit a bit of BIM wash, but most of the BIM wash currently in the market would be in the lower type. It would be more because of confusion or inexperience. Although there are some companies that do commit exaggeration and illusion, and you have to watch out for this, especially if you're a client organization and owner, you have to keep an eye open for this, and especially in markets where BIM is mandated by government, like in the UK or in Singapore and others. We have to keep watch on BIMwash. So enough about BIMwash. BIMwash is a topic that really personally annoys me a lot. I face it nearly every day, and although I can detect it quite easily, sometimes it takes a bit of investigation. And actually, because of encountering BIMwash, I focus lots of my efforts on developing tools and processes to alleviate BIMwash, first to discover it and then to alleviate it. So really, we don't really want to spend much time on BIMwash. We really want to focus on BIM performance and how we can improve our BIM performance. Now, if in order for us to improve our performance, we have to first one thing, we have to need to learn how to assess our performance. So if we cannot really assess our performance, we cannot improve it. So I'm going to discuss with you today two types of BIM performance assessment. I'm hoping that you take some benefit out of this. There's a couple of things that I'm going to provide links for that you can continue reading from there, and I'm going to provide you with a link to download a specific template freely available. So I'm going to discuss two types of BIM performance assessment. This is a new topic. Some of you may never have heard of these concepts, so I'm going to try as much as possible to stop within an hour and just give some time for questions. There's two types of BIM performance assessment. Something called the staged performance assessment and something called continuous performance assessment. Now, stage, I'm going to explain both, of course. Stage is a bit easier to understand than continuous. Both of them are good, but staged is a bit easier and has simple tools and template that you can use tomorrow to assess your company, for example, and to help start improving your performance. While continuous performance assessment a little bit more elaborate and needs specialized tools in order to develop the right plan for continuous performance improvement. Anyway, I'm going to be discussing both of them today, and both of them you can develop in-house or use some of the available tools. But it's important for us to understand a little bit the difference between them and then select one of them, because both of them are good. So what is staged performance assessment? Staged performance assessment starts from a basic assumption. We have two assumptions. Assumption is a kind of way of looking at the market and saying, okay, what is BIM? What am I trying to assess? How do I improve performance? And this is all, of course, based on research and experience, that there's two contradictory assumptions you can make at the beginning. You can look at BIM, you can look at your company, you can look at the market, and you can say one of two things. The first thing you can say is, one is that BIM has a clear structure. I may not know it, but it has a clear structure. I need to find that structure and then use these topics and activities and performance monitors and measure against them. So given a very, probably later on we'll have a little bit more discussion about levels and etc. So I'm going to describe for you some of the BIM stages and BIM levels. And these together, the stages, levels, and something called steps, are assumed to be there in the market. And of course, based on research, they are there. And we can measure against them. So first thing we're going to discuss under the staged performance assessment is something called BIM capability stages. And we're going to look at it within organizations or within project teams. We're going to focus on organizations just a little bit simpler. So when we're saying BIM and BIM stages, we are saying that you can't really go from pre-BIM to full BIM in one go. And there's no company that can do it. And if they said they are doing it, we automatically can identify them as BIM washing, whether they are BIM washing because they're inexperienced or because they are, committing Hollywood BIM or illusion, or what we call also Bollywood BIM, is depending on the situation. So really, there is no way for a company to go directly from pre-BIM to full BIM, fully integrated model, for example, going from sketches or from CAD, or even from just adopting Revit, ArchiCAD, or Tekla, and just directly into a multidisciplinary, single model environment. So there are stages, and these stages are real, meaning they are measured in real life, and these are the structures that we can identify when people are implementing BIM. So we say that we have an initial stage, which is pre-BIM, so companies before they adopt BIM, and something called post-BIM, situation after complete implementation of BIM. So after full BIM, there will be something new. We don't really know what it is. It could be called any kind of name. We don't really know what the name is, but there will be something after BIM. As there was something before BIM, there will be something after BIM. Let's say we have going from pre-BIM to post-BIM, we have a number of very clearly identified stages for each organization. And now we're looking at organizations. We're not looking at the whole market. Just if we can focus at a specific, like a single organization. You can look at your own organization or an organization you know. So you can go from pre-BIM to something called object-based modeling. This is stage one. So this is where a company moves from using CAD or 2D or sketching even in some markets to object-based modeling. This is by buying the right software, implementing it, doing some training, and start generating projects. And that software must be an object-based or object-oriented type of software, like Revit or ArchiCAD, and but they're doing it on their own, so they're not really collaborating with others. We call this stage one, and many companies are in stage one. When they start collaborating with other organizations, different disciplines, this is called BIM stage two, and we call this model-based collaboration. This is where, for example, the architects and the engineer building services, let's say, are both modeling, and they start exchanging models. Still, the relationship between them is linear, so the architect is providing a copy of their file to the engineer, and the engineer in return provide a copy of their file back to the architect. And we call this stage model-based collaboration, and includes at least two disciplines. But still, each party is developing their own models. They have their own processes, they have their own training approaches, own protocols. And the last stage before post-BIM, of course, is what's called network-based integration. And this is where you have some kind of network-based solution, like software as a service, combining all disciplines in one go, or a model server. And multiple disciplines are working in a federated or integrated modern environment, whether in real time or not in real time. But the idea is that everything is integrated, all data is being collated from different parties and placed in the same federated or integrated model. So we've got object-based modeling, stage one, model-based collaboration, stage two, and network-based integration, stage three. And then we've got post-BIM. This is where the models are really extended by connecting them into other databases, GIS, FM, use infrastructure models, etc. I'm not going to be discussing this today, but if we can remember these three main stages. Now, these stages really are significant performance milestones, meaning you cannot really go from no BIM to BIM stage one, object-based modeling, just by thinking about it. No, you need to invest heavily in software, in training, in implementation, etc. in order to move from pre-BIM to stage one. You also need to invest heavily to move between stage one and stage two. Same thing with stage three. So really, separating these stages are capability steps. So if we want to go from pre-BIM into stage one, and from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, there are specific types of steps, which I'm going to be touching on a bit. But typically, they are all the same type. They are not the same steps. So there are different steps to go from pre-BIM to BIM, from pre-BIM to stage one, and different steps from stage one to stage two, but they are the same type. They always are technology steps that need to be taken, process steps that need to be taken, and policy steps that need to be taken. They're different, of course, across the spectrum between stage 1, 2, and 3, but they are the same type. And these are the structures that we can identify. By just working with tens of companies over the years, you can see that typically all these companies are doing exactly the same thing. The only difference between company A and company B is that company A is bigger and company B is smaller, or company A is an architect, company B is a structural engineer. So all the same step types. There are different steps, of course. So you could, for example, buy a different technology software tool for if you're an architect, or then being a structural mechanical engineer. But it's the same type of step. Buying and implementing and training. With an object-based modeling software. So give you an example of what these step types are. So we've got technology step types, you've got process step types, and you've got policy step types. So for example, under technology, we've got the software, hardware, and network step types. Under the process, there are something about activities, products, and services. Under policy, there's guides, protocols, and mandates. I'm going to provide you with a template, just makes this a little bit easier to understand. But the idea is that there are the same step types moving between these stages. Now, BIM capability stages measure minimum capability. So when you look at a company, if we look at our own company, we can say, okay, we are modeling, we are doing object-based modeling, or we are doing model-based collaboration. But these stages do not tell us if we're doing it well, if we're doing it at good quality. So BIM stages measure minimum BIM ability. They do not measure performance excellence. So we need another metric to measure performance excellence. These are called BIM maturity levels. Now, I don't want you to be confused between what I'm going to show you about BIM maturity levels and the UK BIM levels, or the also called maturity levels. I'm happy to discuss these if you want later on, but these are not related. The UK maturity levels are not really maturity levels. They're more like strategic milestones. I'm going to discuss with you a little bit more maturity levels that we can use in assessing excellence or quality in performance. So what are these maturity levels? We've got 5 of them. We've got something called ad hoc, ad hoc, defined, managed, integrated, and optimized. What do these levels mean? So if we look at any kind of step within the capability steps, so for example, if we say training, or we say software acquisition, or whatever, we can measure how this software acquisition or training has been done. So for example, if we look at training, you can see that, okay, there's no, in an organization, you have training, but it's ad hoc, meaning there's no system. Somebody will come to someone called the BIM manager and say, I need training, and the BIM manager will say, yes, I'm going to give you training, come tomorrow. That's called ad hoc. There's no system. Better level of maturity within an organization if they have defined levels for training. Meaning, for example, if you enter, this is the level of training that you should be receiving. You've got 20 hours on Revit training, you've got 10 hours on Navisworks, and you've got 10 hours about facilitation and collaboration, and 5 hours about PAS 1192-2 or whatever. And that's called defined. So there's some kind of definition for each person within an organization with regards to training. Now, you could have these definitions, but nobody's implementing them because there's nobody responsible for them. So you can have them defined, written in a manual, whatever, but nobody really taking care of them. This is where the managed level comes in, and when you have someone managing all these steps, and changes within an organization as they improve the capability. So you've got someone responsible for training, and so when someone comes in, automatically this person logs them into a system and say, this is the training, you should come, in the next 3 weeks, etc., etc. So there's some kind of management happening. While integrated, which is a high level, is where all these types of steps are integrated together. And I always give this example, which we implemented at one of the companies. This was 10 years ago, actually, where if a new you need to employ someone before someone starts on Monday. On Friday, we prepare their desk. Okay, we put their software. We generate their training plan. We assign their mentor. We do many things. So everything to a single change will allow us to develop a set of integrated steps to deal with that change. That's called integrated. So it's not just managed. All the systems are integrated together. Optimized is the highest level of maturity, and it's about continuous improvement. So there's always a self-reflection about how can I improve training, how can I improve the integration of this with that and this with whatever. The important lesson to remember from these maturity levels are that it's not enough to have a capability. It's not enough to have software acquisition, or training or whatever, or crash detection. It's about the quality of that. You can do crash detection in an ad hoc way. You can have defined, processes for crash detection. You can have someone responsible for managing all your filters and maps and whatever. And then you can have, a higher level of integrating all these deliverables, all these software tools with all the processes and protocols. Now, this diagram combines capability stages, maturity levels, and steps. So I'm just going to explain it quickly, and you can later on either go back to the recording, or this is available online on bimthinkspace.com. And you can, this will help you to understand the relationship between stages and maturity levels, and also the difference between maturity levels here and the ones in the UK. So, for example, this diagram here it has lots of things. So first, you've got going from pre-BIM at the bottom to post-BIM at the top, and here you have some kind of time scale. So if you want a company that wants to move into BIM, they have to go up the readiness ramp, meaning they have to be ready, and then they go through a jump and they adopt BIM. So meaning they're ready. They ask people, say, you need to do, go into this BIM bandwagon. What should we buy? How should we get our hardware, etc. So this is called readiness, and they eventually do it. They buy the software, they start their training, and they generate the first couple of projects. And this is what we call the point of adoption. So when a company does that, not only purchase software, no, it puts it in practice. It uses it on a live project and generates deliverables from the model. We consider that to be the first point of adoption of BIM. This is where we consider a company to be, if you want, BIM, starting to be on the BIM journey. Now, they can be BIM here, but they could be ad hoc. So although you've got 2 people working on a BIM project, another 50 are not, okay? Or you've got the training, it's ad hoc, or you haven't really bought the right amount, number of software, you don't have the right hardware, etc. And this is where a company, even if at stage 1, they can go up the maturity climb. This S-curve is quite flat for stage 1. But they can go up from stage 1A ad hoc to stage 1B, defined and managed, and 1D, 1E. Now, as a company, evolves and depends on the market, they can also start thinking about wanting to collaborate, and they start preparing for it. So they go another ramp, and then they do another jump. And the jump here is by preparing themselves, say, okay, how do I now collaborate? What should I share? What shouldn't I share? Who should I ask? Who should help me? And eventually, they start collaborating with another discipline and starting sharing models. And we call this one is the second point of adoption for stage 2. And also, this collaboration could be only one project. It could be only to do clash detection, to not doing anything really serious like thermal analysis or construction sequencing, or using the model in any advanced way. So they can also improve their performance over time by climbing the maturity ramp. So you can also go from collaboration in an ad hoc way to a defined way to a managed way, integrated and optimized. The same thing happens if they want to go up to stage 3, which is the network-based integration, where, for example, they're a large company and they have invited all their consultants and they trained them all together and said, let's all do an integrated project. Let's use an IPD contract or a PPP or an IPI or whatever, depending on the country. And let's do an integrated BIM project using some kind of network-based solution, a model server, or put them all on the same proprietary software solution. And they do, after they prepare, they go the capability jump, and they are at third point of adoption. Of course, it's the first project, and by the second project and the third and the fourth, and etc., their maturity improves and the quality of the deliverables improve. So what we're looking at here is a point of adoption model. It helps us to identify the capability maturity within an organization and even across a market. Let's say within an organization, we can look at an organization, assess, let's say it's it's got 3 branches. We can look at that the first branch in Singapore, let's say, is a 3A. The one in Melbourne, it's a 2B, and the one in, I don't know, in Vancouver is 1C. Okay, and even within the same company, we can use the model to establish the current performance of that organization, or we can use it to compare the average of one company with an average of another company, etc., etc. But this is called the staged performance assessment model, because we have stages, we've got maturity levels, we have some things that are very well defined, we have steps that are well defined. You know, we know it's about software, we know about training, we know it's about protocols, and we can measure against them, so we can see if people are using them or not using them. So that's called the staged performance assessment model, and this is very easy to use to establish if a company is BIM washing, or what level of performance they are at, or to help them to move to the next stage or the next maturity level. There's a simple template to use. It's called the BIM maturity matrix, and there is a link here. If you go to bit.ly BIM maturity matrix, it's a PDF. Probably I'm just going to download it now. Okay. Okay, and you can see here we've got a matrix. It's got maturity levels at the top, and you've got the capability sets in the first column. You can use this to assess your company. It's called BIM maturity matrix, or BIM cubed. This is organizational discovery, which is what's called low detail. It's for self-assessment, so you can use it. You can download it and use it. And for stage performance. So this works for stage performance. And there are some instructions at the bottom to help you use this template. Okay, like using colors and how you add your scores, etc. So that's an example of a template, easy to use template. You can use internally, and it's not for commercial use. You can't be a BIM consultant and use it with other organizations. But I'm happy for you guys if you want to use it within your own companies. That's the reason why it's published and made available. Now we've done this the staged performance assessment. We're going to look now at continuous performance assessment. And now, continuous performance assessment doesn't have stages and levels, etc. It's got something called performance profiles and performance targets. And it's a different approach to assessing performance and improving performance and integrating performance assessment with other things. So when we're saying continuous performance assessment, if you remember in stage, we said our assumption is that BIM has fixed stages, meaning, and we can see them, and we have fixed maturity levels, and we can measure them, and we've got fixed steps, etc. Now, when it comes to continuous performance assessment, we say it's something different. We say that BIM doesn't have a fixed structure, or we can't see it, or even if it's got a fixed structure, it doesn't help me personally. So what we say is it's a different assumption. Both assumptions are good. So you have to start from a certain assumption which suits you, or an assessor can help you say this is better for you, a staged approach or continuous performance approach, and say this assumption BIM doesn't have a fixed structure, but it's made of thousands of loose concepts and activities, and these loose concepts of activities can only be measured if we compare them to something. And I'll describe what I mean, but I want you to remember that when we're saying continuous performance assessment, we don't have stages, we don't have levels, we don't have compliance. I mean, we don't, like for example in the UK they have level 2, and you have to comply with it. That's based on the staged approach, because you have something very well defined and you're measuring yourself against it. While in continuous, we all have our own levels or our own profiles we want to improve against. So what does this mean? So under this assumption, we're assuming that BIM is made of, it's quite chaotic. There's thousands and thousands of BIM-related concepts and activities. you've got objectives, processes, tools, and workflows, and protocols, etc., etc. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. You only need to read through the internet or go through Twitter or LinkedIn and see that when someone discussing BIM, they're discussing these hundreds and hundreds of topics, which you cannot really classify in any meaningful way and use them in performance assessment, unless what you do is you break this chaos into smaller parts. So rather than looking at these things as like big things that we need to adopt, so I want to adopt level 2, or I want to be compliant with level 3, or I want to be stage 1 capability, whatever, I break it down to smaller pieces, much smaller pieces than we do in any kind of staged assessment. And we use these as building blocks, and I'll explain what these mean in a second. So there's lots of building blocks. Some of them are called, you probably heard the term BIM uses or model uses, like a thermal analysis is a model use. You can break that model, thermal analysis into smaller parts as well. But the most important building blocks, smaller building blocks, are called competency items. And we can use these in assessment, learning, and implementation. So how do we identify competency items? I'm just going to do a time check. Okay. So how do you identify competency items? This is really based on research, so you don't have to really bother yourself with this. But if you're interested, there's a couple of papers about this. If you go to BIMframework.info and look at papers, you'll find a couple of papers covering BIM competency, integrated BIM competency, or BIM competency for learning and stuff like that. The idea is these BIM competency items have been identified by assessing sources. So we look at all these protocols, all the RFPs we can put our hands on, or we look at all these PAS 1192 or things from Canada and whatever, and break them down into small pieces, and then we organize them into something called tiers, sets, and topics. We put them in an online inventory, and then we use that online inventory to generate an assessment and learning material and implementation material. I'm gonna just introduce this briefly because this is more elaborate than staged, but I'm hoping that this will make sense in a second. So after breaking all these topics into small pieces, we reorganize them into standardized topics, which we use for profiling. So I'll discuss what profiling is in a couple of slides. So all these topics, we can put them into 8 sets. So we have 8 sets. We call them managerial topics, administration topics, functional, operation, technical, implementation, supportive, and research and development. And within these 8 sets, we've got 55 topics which we can use for assessment. For example, we can look at component development, we can look at library management, we can look at standardization, technical training, etc. Under implementation. And under functional, we can look at topics related to collaboration, facilitation, project management, etc. And under managerial, leadership, strategic planning, etc. So there's 55 standard topics. And within these topics, it's thousands and thousands of items. So, for example, within strategic planning, there are hundreds of items that look like this. This is put in a question format, but doesn't have to be. So, develop a detailed BIM strategy for your organization. This is called a competency item. And this is another one. Identify the business benefits of BIM collaboration. This is another competency item. Or, for example, if you're doing model management, let's say a data exchange, for example, the ability to export an IFC to X3 from a Revit model. That's a competency item. So you can compile all these hundreds, if not thousands, and there's thousands, of course, and tens of thousands of these items, and put them in an inventory. Now this is the research part, if you want. Now, what do we do with them for the purpose of assessment? So what we do is, there's 3 things we have to do. There's basic steps in continuous performance assessment. 3 basic steps. There's 3 integrated actions, and there are 6 improvement phases. Okay. That's lots to remember, so I'm just going to jump into it. So what are the 3 basic steps? And these are very intuitive steps. They're not hard steps to remember at all. But we just need to remember that when we're doing continuous performance improvement, there's a bit more work to be done, but it gives us a better result for continuous performance improvement. So the very basic step we need to do is, first, we have to establish our current status, meaning we have to assess ourselves. We have to assess, if I'm an individual, I'm an architect or an engineer, I have to assess my own BIM capability, my own BIM competency, or establish my company's current BIM capability. That's the first step. The second step is to define a future target or targets. So, for example, let's say I'm an architect, which I don't really understand BIM, and I want to become a project architect with lots of information management abilities to work on major projects. That's called a target. I can define this. So I use the competency item engine. There's, let's say, a questionnaire you want, if you can do it on your own, and you establish your current status. What do you know, what you don't know about being an information manager. And then based on that, you define the target to say, I want to know all these topics, okay, all these topics which I don't know now in the future. Or if you're an organization, you say, currently I'm using Revit only for clash detection. In the future, I want to use it for construction sequencing or prefabrication. And you define that target using lots of these competency items, which are, as we said, very granular statements saying, I want to be able to do this, I want to be able to do that, whatever. And the third and very important step is to identify the best route to target. So I've already established my current competency, and I'm going to invite you all to use the BIMexcellence discovery tool for personal use. There's a free tool on BIMexcellence.com. There's two actually now open for you if you want to test them. One is called Discovery Individual, which has only 55 questions, and there's another one for the UK Information Manager. I invite you also to test that one. It gives you a profile of what you know at the moment, and you use that to establish current status. Based on that, you define your future target, and then you identify the gap. So, for example, I know how to do this, but I also want to do that in the future. That's a gap. So you establish your gaps, and based on these gaps, if you're an organization, you can bring in a trainer. You may hire new people. You might buy additional software. You can attend a conference, etc., etc. So basically, these three steps are very intuitive, and these three steps are whatever kind of strategy you do, whether it's BIM or not BIM, you have to do them. You have to establish where you are, where you want to go, and the shortest route or the most efficient route for you as a company or an individual to go there. So that's the first steps. Now we have three integrated activities. Now when we're discussing integrated performance improvement, we are really discussing continuous performance improvement, not staged one, okay? Although staged would work as well, but if you want continuous performance improvement, you have to always assess, learn, and implement in one go. Meaning, you have to first assess your competency of your individuals. If you're a company, you have to assess the competency of all your people. You have to look at the capability of your organizational systems, whether you've got the right training systems, change management, knowledge management systems, etc. And the compatibility, for example, if you are an owner and you want to improve your BIM portfolio, you want, or BIM, how much you benefit from BIM, you can also assess the compatibility of your supply chain. So you can assess the compatibility between the architect A and architect B, or between architect and a structural engineer. And the second major activity is to learn. So after assessment and establishing these gaps, we need to focus on learning. And this learning could be through education, formal education through university, or training, or through professional development in-house. And we use also these competency items to generate workflows, checklists, and task lists. I will not be able to cover all this in today's session, but I'm going to cover assessment briefly. But the idea is that if you're using continuous performance improvement and you know what BIM is, because you broke it down to these small pieces, you can combine these small pieces into an assessment. You say, okay, like a set of questions, and then after you ask yourself the questions and you answer them, you know what the gap is, and then you learn. And then you implement a new solution, new innovative solution, or you generate these competency items into a checklist every time you're developing a new project. Have I done clash detection? Have I done clash detection this way? What did I do with shared parameters? What did I do with whatever? These become checklists. The same things that were an assessment can also be used for learning and can be used for implementation. This is called the BIMexcellence knowledge engine, which combines all these competency items and because they are related. I'm not going to focus too much on it, but the idea is that once you identify all the competency items you need as an individual or you need as an organization, you can really do lots of things. Not just assess yourself, you can also learn and improve. All right. So, what to assess? We've covered this. We can assess organization systems. Should we assess people or projects? Actually, we can use them to assess all these. And there's 4 main types of continuous performance assessments, individuals, etc., etc. I'm just going to quickly go through them because I think I've run out of time. I'm just going to quickly go through them. So when you're assessing an individual competency, you are looking at skill, knowledge, and experience. We can easily measure skill. So for example, we can easily measure the Revit skills. We can measure easily experience by looking at someone's CV. When have they done lots of hospitals? We know they've done lots of hospitals, so they have some experience in doing, hospitals. But the difficult part is to assess knowledge, whether they have construction knowledge or they have knowledge of all the new protocols or knowledge of the team dynamics that need to be brought into play if you're working on a collaborative or integrative BIM project, etc. So anyway, the online tool, the free online tool you can use, puts these competency items, assesses each competency item against the 5 levels. These 5 levels are 0, there's no skill or knowledge, basic, intermediate, advanced, expert. And based on that, it generates a profile. I can't go really in detail with this. The one online produces just a bit more basic profile. You can compile these profiles across the whole organization to see the percentage of people who have. This may be easier to understand. So we look at these 55 topics and we can see the distribution of, let's say, project management skills or facilitation skills across the whole organization. So basic skills, all of them basically have it. But when we up the ante a bit to advanced and expert, only a few, people have expert or advanced abilities in managerial or administrative. So once you define all these competency items and use the right engine, you can create a profile of an individual, a profile of an organization, even a profile of a project team made of different organizations. You can generate lots of these reports. And I'm not going to stop at them too much. And you use the same principle to assess organizational capability, with different engine online, capability benchmarks, can generate lots of, you can compare companies, you can compare branches to each other, etc., etc. You can have lots of scores. You can generate templates for assessment. I'm just gonna, because I think we ran out of time. And you can also assess, for example, if you define what is clash detection or what is thermal analysis or what is wind from a BIM perspective, and you can break it down into small pieces. Wind, analysis is this, plus that, plus this. These are the units that we use. This is the minimum capability. This is what I consider to be a good, use of a Revit model and thermal analysis, etc., or wind study. You can then measure it internally, measure it against others. One of the tools I use is something called the BIM wheel, where this helps me identify BIMwash actually. So if I assess a company or a project and they have all these, they say they can do all this, automatically these people are lying to me. They're definitely not exaggerating. This is quite an illusion. This is the highest level of BIMwash. Or if you can see something on the left like that, there's no BIM at all. Now, this is, of course, a very, very experienced company with all these model uses available. So we can use these model uses. Model use is something like this. So space programming is a model use. Clash detection is a model use. asset maintenance is the model use. So we can assess the availability of these model uses within an organization, and we can also assess the quality, not using it with a different metric, the quality of all these deliverables. There's other metrics like certainty, cost certainty, whether they're estimating the cost using models accurately or not, whether it's high cost certainty, low cost certainty. Sadly, I don't have enough time to go through this, but this is very important to compare projects, compare organizations to see if they are using BIM in an accurate way. And of course, we can assess teams, because after you assess an individual, consider this is like a company A, company B, company C, company D, and all these circles are like individuals, and we can assess each individual, and you can do this internally. And then you can look at, okay, if I've got assessed all these individuals, but I then can collate all their abilities together in a work team and see if together they can work on a project. Give an example. So for example, use these competency items. Like for example, you have a hospital project and say, all right, what does a hospital project in a BIM environment need? Okay, it needs, and I am, let's say, an architect, all right? We need someone to be able to model. We need someone to be able to understand how to do collaboration and facilitation. And of course, you can drill down into detail. We need someone who able to use Revit, 2016, whatever. Navisworks, and we need someone who knows Solibri and software, and we need someone who knows the protocols, who know how to develop a BIM management or BIM execution plan. We need someone who can develop an employer information requirements document, etc., etc., etc. So we generate all these lists of requirements even before starting a project, and then you can assess your people on your systems and see if they match. So this is a project, and these are all the requirements for a project, and then I assess my people, or already assessed them. I can then combine their competencies together and see, can I deliver that project? And if not, what are the gaps? And by identifying that gaps, I can fill them, I can address them through training or recruitment, etc. So you dissect something, so you look at a project and you dissect it, or you look at a role. Even, for example, you need a new role, you need a BIM manager, and you say, okay, what does a BIM manager do? And you're going to write down all these competency items for a BIM manager and say he needs or she needs to do this and that and whatever, 100 competency items. And then when they come in, you start, let's say, ask them manually, or you use an online tool to ask them about their abilities, and then you can compare them. You can do this what's called dissection. You're dissecting a project or you're dissecting a role, and then you aggregate based on assessment, and you see if they match. If they don't match, you can take action, and that's really the crux of continuous performance improvement. For example, for a project, you can say, for that specific project, I need cost estimation, prefabrication, life cycle cost analysis, FM through GIS BIM. I need these skills, IFC4, anyways, and Navisworks, and 56 new families, for example. And I look at my people currently put on the project, and I see, oh, nah, they don't match, or they match, or maybe I need to add more people or change. So based on assessment of the requirements, remember the 3 steps: assess what I have, assess the target, and this is the target here on the left, and assess what I have on the right, and then compare them, I can identify the gaps. Now, so we've covered the 3 steps and the 3 integrated activities, which is assess, learn, and implement in one go. And this just quickly, in the last set of slides, is the improvement phases. So how do you do it, and where do you start? This is called the performance improvement wheel, okay? So typically, it's cyclical. You have to always start with a scoping activity. Define vision, identify the metrics and improvement timeline. Then you assess. So first you scope, then you assess, discover or evaluate competency, and generate results. So even if you do it manually by sitting with people and asking them questions, or do it using an online tool or whatever, or using the template I'm going to be providing you available for you online, is you can assess and discover your current ability, and then based on that, you've established a gap. Now So you do the analysis to establish the gap. So you collate all the results for different people, and you generate a detailed report for your own or for others. And then based on that, you do the planning. So, okay, now you've done the scoping. Based on the scoping, you've done the assessment, and then based on the assessment information, you've generated some kind of analysis, some kind of report, and now you plan to fill that gap. So you want to generate an action plan. How do I improve the performance of my team? How do I fill that capability gap of my organization? So you do all this planning. You can do it on your own, or you can bring in your favorite BIM consultant or whatever. And then you do the acting part, meaning now, based that you've done the assessment analysis and now have a series of plans, you can start to implement these plans. You can start training, standardizing, purchasing, adopting, customizing, etc., etc., etc. And if you are you want to adopt a continuous performance improvement approach, then you measure against your original scope, meaning have I achieved my goals? I mean, this was my scope, this is what my plan. So now you look after the acting, have I achieved my goals? And you go on and on. So continuous performance improvement is about this life cycle. It's about starting with, scoping. You must do assessment. Then you must do some kind of analysis internally or using a third party, and then you have to go through planning and acting and then measuring again. In summary, so what is integrated performance improvement? Based on both the staged approach and the continuous approach, integrated performance improvement is it is all about continuous assessment. You never stop. So even if you assess now, improve, then you assess again, and then improve. So you have to assess oneself or others, and you then have to persistent closure of these performance gaps through learning, or and learning, we said, it could be through formal education or through professional development or through training, and a non-stop implementation of innovative solutions. Currently, we are dealing with BIM, and BIM is multiple stages and have lots and lots and lots of innovation in it and lots of potential in it. And we can start with just basic object-based modeling as a staged approach. We assess ourselves against it, and then we close that gap, and then we look at collaboration. From collaboration, look at integration. And if we're using a continuous performance improvement approach, we don't have stages and levels. We say, this is my goal as a company. I want to be able to deliver all these possibilities. Or for me as an individual, I want to become an information manager. I want to become this or that. You assess yourself against that role, and then you fill that gap by learning, and then you change your goal. You've reached it. You now move it up or sideways to something else, and you continuously improve. That's really the crux of integrated performance improvement, the integration of assessment, learning, and implementation. Thank you. All right, we're gonna open now chat window, and Rexter or
Rexter. Hello, Rexter. You need to unmute him. Hold on.
I should? Okay.
Yeah, just unmute him.
All right, where are you?
Just. Yeah.
Okay, he is unmuted.
Okay. Darren and Rexter?
Yeah, never mind.
Okay. I think you were, you had, if there was any questions, is that?
Yep, is there any questions, any comments from
question?
both? Yep.
I think I have a question, one question.
Go for it.